So we just had a PS5 event and another Nintendo Direct, one of the mini Directs, the partner Directs. And the Nintendo one I'll go through first very quickly. Again, in these I don't really go through everything that was shown. I just talk about what stood out to me personally very briefly, what I'm interested in or not. The Nintendo one I'm going through first because there really was nothing there for me. Especially with these mini directs and these partner directs, it's very specific and to your taste, whether or not you like it. I know there are a lot of people in the last one that are very disappointed, and I was the total opposite because I love SMT, I love Shin Megami Tensei, and I'm very, very excited for that to come out on the Switch. And then, of course, Nocturne, which we'll probably end up getting on PS4 because Amanda really wants to play that as well. So with these mini directs, you're either going to find something you really, really like or not. It's all very, just based on your taste. But what I saw did look really good, even though there's nothing that personally interested me, especially if you are a Monster Hunter fan. It looked like some really great stuff there for fans of that franchise. So a lot of good stuff was actually shown, even though there's nothing to my particular taste. And as far as the PlayStation 5, we had a look before at a few of the games, and there are a few new things shown off, and another look at the system, and finally, of course, the release date and the price. With the reported expense of the manufacturing of the PlayStation 5, I'm not surprised by the price at all, but I'm a little surprised they didn't try and undercut Xbox. I know it would be more of a financial difficulty for Sony to try and accomplish that, but at least they're going head to head with the price. And yeah, so it's not super surprising, but I don't think it's too high or anything. I think just a little surprised they didn't try and undercut Xbox a little bit, but I think overall it's going to roll right over Xbox this holiday season, all depending on what people can actually get as far as pre-orders and whatever. As far as what was shown off that was new, in general we don't really get consoles close to launch. I think the only consoles we ever got, even within the same year of launch, were the Switch and I guess the PlayStation 2. Probably the only ones ever. Otherwise, it's been several years into the generation. And the same thing's going to be with us for the PlayStation 5. There's really nothing that, there were some things that grabbed our attention, but nothing that is like, oh, I have to get this right now. And some of the more interesting looking games are also going to be released on the PlayStation 4, which we already own, so not really worth getting a whole new system for those. The two that really stood out to me, though, were Final Fantasy 16, which I am curious about. Definitely not sold on it yet. Curious, I'll say, though. Final Fantasy was my favorite gaming franchise, as a kid, starting with the first one on the NES all the way through the PlayStation 2 era. And since then, I have not enjoyed a single Final Fantasy game except the Final Fantasy VII Remake, Part 1. So, Final Fantasy 13 was one of the biggest gaming disappointments I ever had, and 13.2, and then I never touched 13.3 or any of the online games. I don't play MMOs. 15, I zero interest in that boy band RPG. There's nothing about it that appealed to me. And just Final Fantasy is just a very, very different series now, and I haven't really been into it. But this looks interesting. I'm actually curious. I was very impressed with Final Fantasy VII Remake, the first part. I loved that. So that kind of reinvigorated a little bit of my faith in that a new Final Fantasy could be really good. And I am very pleasantly surprised that they seem to be going back to a very fantasy-focused Final Fantasy game. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that has me curious to see more and learn more about this. So we'll see. That might be one that we'll end up picking up once we get a PlayStation 5 down the road. The one game that would make us get a PlayStation 5 next year, 2021. As I said, normally you'd probably wait like 2 or 3 years into the generation, but the one thing that would be God of War. I really loved God of War. I played the ones on PlayStation 2 and 3 and enjoyed them, but the new one on PlayStation 4, I did a whole new experience, just blew those away. And my wife Amanda is a massive fan of God of War. That I would dare say that might be her favorite game of all time. She has, the big collector's edition with the statue and Kratos and Atreus and everything, and she has the novelization, and I mean, she's just super into that God of War. And that made her a huge fan of the PlayStation 4 in general. That single game, I mean, she plays just about nothing but the PlayStation 4, and then Animal Crossing on Switch. That's it. And she's become, a PS4 nut, all starting with God of War. And, if it also releases with a PlayStation 4 version, we'll, of course, grab that immediately, pre-order whatever special edition that has. But if it is a PlayStation 5 exclusive, that would be the thing that makes us buy the console. Because that's, especially with these newer consoles, before I would just, kind of pick one during the generation and maybe get some of the other ones as the generation moves on and just enjoy lots of games. But now, with so many games from past generations that we still haven't even played yet, games in the backlog, other games we want to try out or replay over the years, and with there being less and less time, sometimes as you get older to play games, really there's no rush to get a console for us. And the other thing too is it's more of, as interesting as the hardware and the new experiences, as much as I like that, the only thing that will make me get a console now, and I think we're both kind of this way, is a very specific game. It has to be something that's a huge deal, because there are things that look good coming out on things like the Xbox and the PlayStation 5 and whatever, but it can't just be something that looks like that might be fun, because we already have 100 games that are going to be fun they haven't played yet. It has to be something like a Shenmue 3, which is the reason we got a PlayStation 4. We probably wouldn't have even had a PlayStation 4 if it wasn't for that game. I wanted it specifically for that, and Amanda just started playing it because we had it. And yeah, God of War, if that comes exclusively to the PlayStation 5, no PS4 edition, that would be the thing that would make us get the PlayStation 5 next year. So I'd be curious to hear what games stood out to you. There were a bunch of new things that were shown off, and we got a closer look at Resident Evil 8. So some pretty interesting titles. Again, though, I feel like at launch, even more so than normal, there's really no incentive in my mind. There are very few games that I think are going to be available at launch, and it just really does not look. I mean, I'm going to buy a PlayStation 5 and play Fortnite and download some free PS4 games. I mean, to me that is just not worth the price tag. I really have it's a cool piece of tech, and I think the future will be bright for the PlayStation 5 in particular, but yeah, right now I just don't see a reason to get one. And even as far as 2021, even though some other games looked interesting, the only thing that would make us really pull the trigger would be God of War.